welcome to the Jazz Ranch. Hipsters, flipsters, finger-popping daddies, and groovy chicks. Welcome back. And you know, people ask me about the alto dominant man, his background, what does he do? You know, well, he's really actually a very lazy guy, but he was a drummer years ago. And you know, he used to play in my band, actually. Can you imagine that? Your alter ego playing in your band. Anyway, we had a New Year's Eve gig one time, and he's so lazy he wouldn't lug his equipment. He would have us lug all his equipment in and that kind of thing. At any rate, at the end of the gig, we did a really good job, and the owner came up to us and said, "I love you guys. You played a great gig." He said, "Can you do the gig next year, same time?" And he said, "Yeah, sure." And the alto dominant man says, "Oh, that's cool, man. Can I leave my drums here?" Can you imagine? I know that's a famous joke, but anyway, I thought it was appropriate for the alto dominant ego man, you know. And I love Victor Borge. He was one of the great comic musicians with great talent as well, you know, in music and on the piano. And he said this about requests. You know, he said, "I normally don't do requests unless, of course, I've been asked to do so." I love that. And he also said this: "Humor is something that thrives between man's aspirations and his limitations. There's more logic in humor than in anything else, because you see, humor is truth." You know, I think he had something there. I agree with that totally. Now, I had a request, and I will acknowledge it. It's not my forte, but it has to do with transposing. In other words, how to play a song in a key and then transpose it to another key, or to accompany a singer, and they want to sing the song in a different key that you know it in, that you're comfortable in, and so you have to transpose it. That's what we're going to talk about. Here we go. Transposing means that I've learned a tune in a specific key, and now I want to change the key. I want to transpose it to another key. For instance, I might learn it in C and I want to transpose it to E flat, which is upper minor third. Now, it's important for pianists to learn to transpose, because a lot of times as a pianist you're going to work with singers. That's probably the most important thing that would require transposing, would be to work with singers, because you might learn a song in one key and they want to sing it up a fourth higher or a third lower or a fifth lower or up a half step or whatever, you know. So it's important for a pianist to learn to transpose. And I'm going to give you a couple of methods. Now, it's difficult for pianists to transpose, more so than maybe guitarists or bass players or horn players, because when you move from C to D flat, you're going from no flats and sharps to 5 flats, and then you go up another half step, you're going to 2 sharps. Then you go up to E flat, you're going to have 3 flats. And if you go up half step to E, you're going to have 4 sharps. You go up another half step, you're going to have 1 flat, and so on and so on. See, so it changes radically from key to key. And usually I recommend, well, transposing through the cycle of fifths. In other words, start with the easier keys, you know, like C, then maybe transpose to F, and then maybe or to G and B flat, and try to do that. Try to learn a tune in a couple of different keys. Particularly, you want to start with a song that you really know well, you know, and I'm going to show you a couple of methods of transposing now. Now, a good thing to do is to try to hear a tune in a couple of different keys as a starting point. You know, some people just have a talent for that. They have great ears, they're just born with them, or they have perfect pitch, whatever. They can just hear a melody in different keys. So it's important to develop that skill. You know, like say you're playing Misty, or you're going to play Misty, be able to sing that melody. You can try singing along with the melody as you play it. Look at me, I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. Now you want to look at me, I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. Now take it to another key, like maybe up here. Look at me, I'm as helpless as a kitten up a tree. You know, to get the part to nail those notes and sing them is an important part of being able to transpose, because your ear has to tell you if it's right or if it's wrong or if it's in tune or whatever. And that's not easy, but that's a good tip, is to try to sing the song in different keys before we get into doing other things. So let's now look at a formula and some techniques that are more, shall we say, intellectual, that don't rely on your ears so much. Now, I think there's 2 essential methods of transposing that are the best, and then there's other ways as well. But the first two are going to be the chord progression formula, using the chord progression, and then transposing it by intervals. And the other one is just to look at every chord and transpose by interval method. In other words, you need to learn your intervals. You know, like major second, major third, perfect fourth, perfect fifth, sixth, major sixth, major seventh. You need to know all those intervals in every key. Now, that if you don't know your intervals, then this is going to be difficult for you. But anyway, let's look at Misty, and what it is we're going to look at the formula of the progression. So it starts on the 1 chord, then it goes up to the 5 chord. So it starts on the 1 chord. So in C, we're going to start on C major. Then it goes up to the 5 chord, which is G, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but it's minor. And then it goes 5 chord minor, and then it goes the 1 chord dominant. So there's two ways to look at that. The formula would be the 1 chord to the 5 minor, to the 1 dominant, to the 4 major. Okay, so C major, G minor, then C dominant to the 4 chord major. You see, so now you're learning the formula of the progression. Then from there it goes to like this. The 4 minor, now that's a flat 7 dominant, but it's like doing a 1-4 progression. I'll explain that in a minute. Then it goes to the 3 chord, to the 6 chord, to the 2 chord, through the cycle of fifths, to the 5 chord. Then it repeats that progression, but using the 6 as a dominant rather than in its natural form. See, so there's the formula. Now it's 1 goes to 5 minor, then the 1 dominant, which is really a 2-5 into the 4 chord, and then the 4 minor, and then it's related 4th dominant, which is the 7 chord dominant. I know this sounds like a little complex, but stay with me here. Then it's the 3, 6, 2, 5. In other words, you're learning the progression of the chords and putting it to a formula. So now if I transpose to E flat, I'm going to use that formula. The 1 chord to the 5 minor, to the 1 chord dominant, to the 4 chord major, then the 4 chord minor, up to the 7 chord, flat 7 chord dominant, then the 3 chord here, to the 6, to the 2, and the 5, and then a turnaround again. You see now, this is not easy. This requires some work. First of all, you have to be able to understand the chord progression and put it to this formula, and then apply it to another key. But this is really kind of the in a lot of ways, the best way to learn tunes in different keys is to know that. But it requires a lot more work. There's an easier method, I think, and that is using the interval method, which I'm going to show you next. Now, the interval method just means that I visualize the interval between the two keys. So if we're in the key of C and I want to go up to F, I visualize that 4th for every chord. So if it's that's all 1 chord, 2 chord, 3 chord, 2 chord, 1 chord. So I've envisioned that progression up a 4th. You see? So now if it's the tune that's all, it goes like this: 1, 2, 3 chord, 2, 1, 4, 4, 3, 6. That's the half diminished on the sharp 4. 4 minor, inverted 1, flat 3 diminished, 3, 6, 2, 5. So now I just visualize each of those chords up a 4th. You know, you can be looking at the chart and just visualize each chord up a 4th. Like. that's good practice to be able to see the intervals, and you really need to know your intervals, but they're laid out for you here. You know, you can see up a fourth, you can see up a minor third, you can see up a fifth, you can see down a fourth, you can see it all here laid out for you. Now, another important method is to use progressions within a larger progression that are smaller, like 2-5-1s, which are in a larger progression of a whole tune, and seeing how they function. For instance, on Autumn Leaves, say we're going to play it in the key of D minor, it would be 2-5-1 into the relative major, then 2-5-1 into the relative minor. So there'd be you think of that progression, 2-5-1, G minor 7, C7, F, which is the relative major, then the 4 chord in F, then the 2-5-1, 2-5-1 in D minor. See, so I'm not thinking so much of the formulas, I'm thinking of those 2-5-1s in that key. So if I took it to B flat, I do 2-5-1 into B flat. This would be relative to G minor. So I go 2-5-1, that's the 5 into the B flat, 4 chord, the 2-5-1 into the relative minor. You see, so I'm thinking more in how the inner chord progression is working in that key. If you're going to transpose the melody of a song, you have to know how it relates to the chord. In other words, what note is it in the chord? In other words, if it's that's all, the first starting note is the third of the key. And also, if the first chord is C, it goes to the fifth. Major 7, then fifth, then the third, then the next chord repeats that melody under the chords. But now, there's the third, 7th, 5th of the chord. There's the root, actually, and so on. In other words, you have to know what that melody line is and how it relates to each particular chord in that scale in order to know, you know. Plus, you can use the shape of the melody line. You know, it has a certain shape to it. So if it's going to be put in another key, it's the same shape. You know, so that learning that shape of that particular melody and how it relates to each chord is important in transposing. This is not easy, believe me. Now, transposing a simple song like Summertime is fairly easy because there's not a lot of chords, right? So like, say with original key, say we start in A minor and we want to transpose to D minor up a fourth. So like the formula would be in A minor, 1 chord, 2 chord, 5, 1 chord, 1 chord dominant, 4 chord, the 5 to 6, 5 chord, 1 chord, 2, 5, and here's a 4 dominant, and then a 3 chord, 2, 5, 1. So that's actually a 3 to a 6. Goes like this. So yeah, 3 chord, 6 dominant, 2, 5, 1. Now apply that same formula to D minor. 1 chord, 2 chord, 5, 1 dominant, 4 chord, 5 chord, 6, 5, and 6 dominant, then 5. 1 chord, 5, 1 chord, and the 4 dominant. And here's the 3 chord, 6 dominant, 2, 5, 1. See, that's fairly easy. So you could play that, you know. Now, say you wanted to do it in F minor. So I'm using that formula now. There's your 4 chord, up the scale. One chord, two. I remember this was 4 here. Then the 3 chord. Now, let's say you're not good at transposing. Well, it probably means you haven't practiced it. You need to practice transposing to get good at it. There's no other way around it unless you're the kind of person that has great ears and you just have a talent for this, a special talent. Most of us have to work at it and have to practice it. And the more you practice this, you'll get better at it, I guarantee. And then you'll be able to work with singers and transpose for them. They'll be very impressed with you, and you'll outshine all the other players that can't do that. So that's guaranteed. Thanks for joining me on this video. If you're still watching this, then you're one of those special people that watch a video to the end, and you're rare. Consider yourself a very special person in my mind anyway. And I hope you enjoyed this video about transposing and it was helpful to you. Please write to me. I always try to respond to all my comments and emails, and give me some time just to get back to you, and I love to hear from you. So if you have questions or anything else you want to ask me, please write to me. And check out my website and my book and so on. So until next time, I'll say in the words of Hermie Dressel, and you know who he is now, I've told you, swing loose. And we'll see you next time around. Bye-bye.